Hi everybody, welcome to Lunchtime Live. I'm gonna wait until I see some comments so I know that people are here. We are here at just outside the visitor center, and it's a coastal sage scrub maritime succulent habitat. And I think Maria mentioned that not too long ago we did see a Pacific Coast rattlesnake right here. So this is one species that I hope that I don't see today. Usually I want to see one and show it to you, and they don't show up. This one I would just assume it doesn't show up. Is anybody here? Let me know if you can hear me. I think we have pretty good wind protection here. Hi Janice, how are you? I'll just wait for a few more people to tune in. Hi Sally. We are going to be talking about the Southern Pacific rattlesnake today. So a lot of people come to the reserve and they see our rattlesnake signs. And it's not because we have very many of them. Most of them are down at Border Field. But we do have a few. And they are something you need to be aware of. Hi Sonia. Hi Mark. Okay. I guess I'll get started if everybody can hear me. So this is the Pacific Coast rattlesnake. See if you can. I feel like I have some there. You can see them. Okay. So the Southern Pacific rattlesnake. Some people call it the Western rattlesnake. I like to say Southern Pacific just because it really likes the coastal environment, and the scientific name is Crotalus atrox. So the range is coastal Southern California to western northern Baja. And they're considered generalists, which means they're, not real picky about their habitat, but they do like this coastal sage habitat and also grasslands. And they like to hang out in piles of rock, rocky outcroppings. So rattlesnakes don't defend their territory. So just because you see one a certain place one day doesn't mean you'll see it there another day. And as I said, probably before you tuned in, Maria had seen one right here by the building at the estuary. And you know how I'm always saying, oh, I wish I could find the species to show you instead of just talk about it. But in this case, I just assume we not. Okay, so let's see what they look like. They're pretty heavy-bodied snakes, and they're about 2 feet to 5 feet long. And if you'll notice, they have this triangular head because they're pit vipers, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. They have this nice dark diamond pattern. You may have also seen the diamondback rattlesnakes, and they have a similar diamond pattern, but they're a rustier color. So this is very dark, and it has this dark stripe on its head, and again it's triangular, and they kind of have sort of heavy eyebrows, so they look like they're in a bad mood. And in fact, this rattlesnake is known to be a little bit more aggressive than the others, and I suppose for that reason a little more dangerous, and it also has a bit more of a toxic venom, the most poisonous. So lucky for us, these are the snakes that we have here. It's the most common snake in San Diego, common rattlesnake in San Diego. So their eyes, you can't see in this picture, but they're elliptical like cats. And they constrict to allow light in and out. And rattlesnakes, all snakes, lack movable eyelids. And so what they have instead is called a spectacle. And, you know, like a spectacle. But it's kind of a clear scale that goes over their eye to protect it. And down by the rattle, it becomes a striped pattern, and then you'll see a rattle. So their rattles are made of keratin, which is the same thing that your hair and your nails are made out of. And they're not, one of the myths is that you can tell their age by the number of rattles. But rattles can break. So also they tend to get a new rattle when they shed their skin. And they can shed their skin a number of times during the year. Their rattle moves back and forth at 60 times a second. So that's pretty fast, and they rattle to warn you. Now, they don't always warn their prey because they want to eat them. So the fact that they are warning us is a favor. And as far as their skin shedding, they shed skin in one continuous piece. It's one big piece, not lots of little particles the way we shed skin. And it's called ecdysis. And they do it a few times a year. And it's like changing your clothes because you've outgrown them. Their skin doesn't grow with them, so they have to change out their skin. And they also do it to remove dangerous parasites. So it's kind of also like taking a bath in a way. Or washing your clothes, I guess would be better. And this skin change can take days to weeks, and it's really important that they don't, that they're not bothered during their skin change. And typically before they do it, they don't look very healthy. They kind of take on a bluish hue, and their eyes get kind of opaque, and they don't see as well. Hi, Gary and Juanita. Thanks for watching. So rattlesnakes are cold-blooded, and that means they can't regulate their temperature. And so when you see them, because you're, following the rules and you're on the trail, you're going to see them, if you pay attention to where you're walking, you may see them right out in front of you sunning themselves on the trail. And that's what they're trying to do, is just regulate their temperature. They like 70 to 90 degrees, so they like it hot, and that's when they're active. So in the summertime, they can be active even at night. So we don't think of them as like diurnal or nocturnal. We think of them, they're heat motivated. So they're active when it's hot, and if it's below 40 degrees, they hibernate. So we don't get a lot of below 40 degrees around here, but they are really inactive when it's cold. And if you tuned into the squirrel episode, that when squirrels are swishing their tails and stuff, they're trying to assess how active that rattlesnake is. And because sometimes they're pretty docile. Okay, so food. Rattlesnakes eat small reptiles like mice, and they eat baby things like, again, the squirrel episode. They like to go in those holes and eat baby squirrels. And they eat baby rabbits and mice, and they also eat lizards, other reptiles. Snakes only eat when they're hungry, so an adult snake only eats like twice a week. And a young snake might eat once a week because they're growing. And snakes have a forked tongue that you can see go in and out, in and out. They flick it, and it's to pick up odor particles. And then they pass them over a special smelling organism in the organ in the roof of their mouth, and it's called a Jacobson organ. So that's what they're doing when they flick their tongue, is trying to smell. They're also pit vipers, and pit vipers have these sensitive pits called a laural pit. It's on each side of their head. You can't really see them, but I think that's why their head is shaped the way they are. And what it does is it detects the prey's heat, and it sees like a heat image of its prey. So that's why they can detect prey even in the dark. And also, that's why they know they don't want to eat us, right? And so they rattle. And because they can see that we're really large and not something that they want to eat. And it's because of this laural pit, because they detect our size by the heat that we give off. As far as venom, they have fangs, and that's how they inject the venom into their prey. And they have a striking speed of 0.5 of a second. And the species and the habitat determine how much venom they're going to inject. So they can control it. And venoms are delivered from glands that are above the upper jaw in the venom duct, and then it goes into the enlarged fangs. And it is a myth that young rattlesnakes are more poisonous than adult rattlesnakes. They actually have less venom because they're smaller. However, they also have less rattles, so they're not as able to warn you. Locomotion. They have 3 kinds of locomotion, and one is called rectilinear, and that's kind of like when you watch a caterpillar go like this. You know, they do it with their legs. A snake does it with its ribs. And that is the most common way that they get around. The other is serpentine. And, you know, if a snake wants to get away from you, you'll see it do that S shape. You know, it's like, that's a serpentine. And that's used for a short burst of speed. And the third kind is called sidewinding, which you won't see snakes do very often. That's their speediest, and it is 2 to 3 miles an hour. So that's if they really want to just get somewhere long, you know, and they want to, it's not for a short burst of speed, it's more of a endurance speed. And at 2 to 3 miles per hour, let's face it, you could outrun a snake. Breeding. So females only breed every 2 years, which is not that often. And they are ovoviviparous, which means that while they have eggs, snakes are born in eggs, they do not lay eggs. They carry the egg sacs inside the mother's body, and they incubate there for 90 days. The young are born encased in this membrane, kind of like a little cellophane package, and they poke their way out for their first breath. They emerge fully developed and ready to go, independent. So when they're 2 weeks old, they need to shed that skin, and when they shed their skin, they get their first rattle. And then they take off on their own. And so they take off after that first shed, and they find a den of their own and food of their own. Now dens, as I mentioned, they really like those rock outcroppings. When I was a kid, I was up on top of this big granite boulder, and it was just me and a friend, and all of a sudden we heard all this rattling. and there was a snake, a rattlesnake nest right under the shale. You know how granite kind of picks up in pieces? There's like shelves in it. Well, they were underneath this shelf, and they were all the way around us. At least we thought they were. And so we stayed on that rock until it got dark and cold, and we knew that, you know, they couldn't catch us, and we jumped off and went home. But I never will forget that snake nest I was standing on top of. So when it's time to hibernate, and I just found this out, they will follow their mom's scent and possibly use the same den. Some dens have been in that snake's family for over 100 years. So that's pretty amazing. I guess you wouldn't want really to relocate a rattlesnake, although, you know, okay, it wouldn't have the family home, but it could find its own den. They sleep in it's called unihemispheric sleep, which means that half of their brain is asleep and the other half is awake. So they are always partially awake. Snakes do have predators, and up here at the estuary we have lots and lots of California king snakes. And king snakes are rattlesnakes' enemy. And the king snakes win. And also down by Borderfield, we have roadrunners, and roadrunners love to eat a good rattlesnake. And coyotes will eat them too, although sometimes, you know, the snake bites them and it doesn't work out so well. Also, some animals will trample them, like cattle or horses will, you know, stomp them to death. Their lifespan is 15 to 20 years, which is pretty long. You know, it has to do with their habitat and, you know, what prey what predators they live around and stuff like that. But rattlesnakes are really important to the environment, so it behooves us to get along with them because they are major, you know, rodent patrol. They really control that population. Hi, Omar and Sally, and I can't read the other name, Donna. So they do have a real purpose in the environment, and you know, it's easy enough to avoid them because A, you're on the trail, and if you're paying attention to where you're walking, you can see them, and if they're sunning, you know, you can easily avoid them. And if they sense that you're there, they will probably do that serpentine and get out of your way pretty quickly. Does anybody have any questions about rattlesnakes? Hi, Cindy. We do have them here, but again, we have mostly a lot of king snakes, gopher snakes, other snakes. Rattlesnakes, remember, they have this shaped head, and you can outrun them. You can back up, as the title says, snake, rattle, and back up. And they don't want to eat you, so that's why they rattle at you, and they just want you to go away. And if you don't go away, they're gonna go away as fast as they can. So I guess that's all I have to say on the Southern Pacific rattlesnake. I'll show you one more time. Kind of have a glare here. There he is, crawling up one of those rock outcroppings. All right. Okay, well, we'll tune in next week. We're going to be talking, Maria's going to be talking about a plant next week, so be sure and tune in, and we'll see you then. Thanks. Thanks, Sonia. Thanks, everybody.